And just so you know, at the end, so first of all, just to make sure that we're creating a safe space, to be mindful that this is being recorded. So when we have some opportunities to share, I'd really just ask you to be general in any comments. Please don't share any personal health information or any personal information of others. At the end, we'll have questions and answers, which could also be a time to share some stories or some of your own concerns. And that's just because this is recorded and will be available, and we don't want other things out there on the internet that of your life or others' lives. So just be mindful of that. And if any of that comes up in our times of sharing, I will remind you. And again, that's just to create a community of safety during this time together. As I was looking at the title that I gave to Pix and Elizabeth a while ago, I thought, gee, this could almost be like a congregational fundraiser or a regional fundraiser or something. Communities of faith singing songs of hope to support mental health. I chose that because our first video will talk about what spirituality is. And in the work of clinical spiritual care, we call our spirituality our unique song. And it's a really great acronym. Besides the fact I'm going to use a couple of verses of two of my favorite hymns that really, I think, relate to what we are called to do as people that are part of faith communities, and how I just really think that is a way to tend to the spirits of ourselves as well as others. And fortunately for you, I will not be singing. I'm going to share my screen, and let's hope that all of this works. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay, wonderful. All right, so the World Health Organization has made a definition of health as a dynamic state of complete physical, mental, spiritual, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. Surprisingly enough, it was only in 1998 that the World Health Organization acknowledged the importance of spirituality to our overall health. So they included the word spiritual in the description of our overall health. So we have physical health, mental health, social health, and spiritual health. And they are the four dimensions of our overall health and well-being. Now, fingers crossed and prayer that this works. Okay.
If hospitals were body reparations, your body go home with
It's muffled, Kelly.
Is it?
and it is not just body.
Click all these extra buttons for the optimizing. So let's see.
Go home good as new. But humans are not cars, and it is not just bodies that are affected by illness. The inner life, emotions,
Can
and
you
spirit
see it or hear
is
it?
affected too. That's why spirituality
No, neither. It's garbled sound and we don't see it.
is a person's unique.
All right, then we're obviously not praying hard enough. All right.
You're not sharing your screen.
Okay. Screen share, we've got that. Can you see this now?
Yes.
Okay. Let me know, Elizabeth. Can you just say out loud if you can see it and hear it okay when I click?
Okay.
If hospitals
See
were
it.
body repair shops for humans,
Excellent.
a person could bring their body in. The doctors could repair the parts that don't work, and they could go home good as new. But humans are not cars, and it is not just bodies that are affected by illness. The inner life, emotions, and spirit is affected too. That's why spirituality matters in healthcare. Spirituality is a person's unique understanding of and connection to self, others, nature or the natural order of the world, and God or one's source of greater meaning and purpose. Spirituality is a person's unique song. It is not the same as religion, but may include religion. When a person is ill or hospitalized, their spirit can be broken or wounded. They may feel like they are no longer themselves. Connections with friends or family may be strained. Maybe they cannot enjoy nature the way they used to. Or maybe the world no longer makes sense. Some people feel abandoned by God. Some feel that life has lost its purpose. Spirituality may help them find or maintain a sense of direction in their lives. If we want people to be well, we need to care for their spirit along with their body. A message from the New Brunswick Spiritual Health Network.
So spirituality is dynamic and intrinsic, and it's such an important aspect of humanity. And it really helps us understand, it's our way of understanding our meaning, purpose, and transcendence, and our experience of our relationship to self, family, others, community and society, nature or the natural order of things, and things that are significant or sacred in our life. And when I learned that acronym of SONG as a description of our unique spirituality, it really resonated with me in a way that brought me outside of what it means to be religious or part of a religious community. And then to recognize that spirituality, that sense of all the things that are important to us, who we're connected to, who we believe ourselves to be and see ourselves, the questions that we have about our own selves and about our lives, recognize how that impacts our overall wellness. So to even think about how spirituality affects our well-being, I invite you to think about those times that you have known a sense of peace, of ease, of comfort, or of hope, even when things seem to be out of balance. Those of us who are part of a community of faith or connected to a religious tradition, research has demonstrated that the impact of religious, spiritual, and existential beliefs, our values, and our practices can really help us in making life choices. They can help with our interaction with others. They can assist us in moral decision making. They can help us find our way in life. And they can help us to transcend or cope with suffering. Many people have also experienced that sense of a religious tradition or a value system or belief system that actually moves them further away from knowing themselves, from having that sense of who they are, being disconnected, not understanding or not being in relationship with those that are important to them, having a break in that relationship, not being able to really sit with or contemplate ways of coping with big questions in life, and sometimes even turning away from a sense of God or their own greater purpose. When we practice spirituality that's healthy and whole, it brings us a sense of meaning, purpose, and connection to our lives. Spiritual, religious, existential, and/or cultural practices can enhance our sense of well-being and improve our quality of life. It can provide social supports that are important to us and generate feelings of love and forgiveness. So when our body, our mind, and our spirit are in alignment or in a state of balance, that's whole well-being. And in this state, we feel confident, connected to purpose, people, and community. We feel peaceful and energized. We feel resilient and we feel safe. And in short, we're able to flourish. The World Health Organization has this definition of mental health. Mental health is a state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her own potential, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to their own community. Mental health is not merely the absence of mental illness. It's an essential resource for daily living and the foundation for effective functioning from cradle to grave, enabling people to experience life as meaningful and to be creative, productive members of society. I invite you to look at this word cloud. Take a moment and be aware of what thoughts have jumped into your mind. Maybe there's a word or a few words that you saw right off. Take a moment to just acknowledge, be aware of what those words might be. And now I want you just to tune into your body. I want you to really kind of place yourself in your body, be aware of any physical sensations that you might be having as a reaction to this word cloud. Are any specific emotions or feelings emerging for you as you look at these words? One of the things that's made me very grateful about the United Church of Canada's Affirm process and program is that we have learned, continue to learn that words matter. The reality is we all have mental health, and therefore we will likely experience mental health challenges and illness or disorder. A mental illness or disorder is a healthcare concern, and it's one that we need to be aware of. We need to be aware of our biases and our reactions to certain words, to certain thoughts, to certain feelings that come over us. In considering the work of mental health and mental health challenges, one of the things for congregations or individuals to consider is that words matter. So mental illness is a term that is often used and is still used in literature, as we even saw in the World Health Organization's definition. It's a term that many may experience as hurtful. So when we think of the work that we're doing in congregations or just in our own conversations with individuals, thinking about the terminology of mental health challenge, mental health condition, or mental health disorder might be more appropriate terms to use. So as individuals and the communities of faith, as we consider working to be a safe space to support and welcome those with mental health conditions and those who are looking after or supporting those that they love who have mental health disorders, we need to be aware of our language, our ideas, our biases, and any stigmas that may have part of our lived experience. So mental health is mental health illness or disorder. There is no single cause. It's a description of a continuum of emotional conditions, from mild depression to serious brain disorders that can affect one's ability to function. It's a diagnosis, and it's a diagnosis of a physical or mental condition. And one of the things that we know is that a diagnosis does not define the whole person. Neuroscientists are in awe of the human brain. It has billions of nerve cells, neurons, thousands of connections by each neuron to other neurons, and trillions of possible pathways for nerve impulses to travel. Researchers continue to uncover the mysteries of this complex organ. But enough is known at this time to say that serious mental health disorders have a biological component. And because mental health conditions involve a biochemical change in the brain chemistry, Certain medical conditions can contribute to mental health disorders. Like those who have diabetes may be more likely to develop heart disease. We might see that as part of a continuum of the illness or the medical condition of that individual. So too, there are many factors that can contribute to the development of emotional disorders. Elizabeth talked earlier, those who lack social support, people that lack the basic essentials of life, like shelter, like safety. People who feel isolated are at a higher risk for developing mood disorders. And of course, traumatic events in life, losses of all kinds, environmental trauma, and the perceived absence of meaning in one's life can contribute to the onset of a mood disorder. I'm not going to go into a lot of the specifics of mental health conditions. There are absolutely excellent programs for congregational leaders and pastoral care committees to take to learn more. One is mental health first aid course, and that's offered by the Mental Health Commission of Canada. And I have a link to that resource at the end of my presentation. I'm pretty sure you can also reach out to Sue King, because Wendy Stewart and Sue are actually instructors for that program. So while scientists continue to learn more about the causes of a wide variety of physical and mental health conditions, we know that a diagnosis does not define the whole person. People with mental health disorders are unique individuals created by a loving God and have their own skills, gifts, talents, and abilities. A quote from the former First Lady of the United States, Rosalind Carter. She said, "People with mental health problems are our neighbors. They are members of our congregations, members of our families. They are everywhere in this country. If we ignore their cries for help, we will be continuing to participate in the anguish from which those cries of help come. A problem of this magnitude will not go away. Because it will not go away, and because of our spiritual commitments, we are compelled to take action." I think many of us in our lives know individuals, maybe family members, maybe even yourself, who have experienced mental health challenges. It could be something like anxiety or mild depression, or a condition that is different, like schizophrenia. I want us to think about some of the biases and some of the stigmas and maybe some of the things of our learned or unlearned behaviors. And I'll give two experiences from my own life. At the beginning of my ministry, I was settled in Northern Ontario, a very remote community. And there was a young mom and dad that were active in our congregation. Both of them were on the board, both of them active in all of the things that we did as a congregation. And after the birth of their second child, about 6 months after that birth, the mom experienced postpartum psychosis and ended up having to go to the hospital that was closest to us, which was about an hour away. Both of them had management roles in our local mill. So there was a lot of adjusting that dad needed to do at that time. He worked shift work, had to be there at different times. And both of the children were under the 4 years old. Their extended family was a very long distance from the community. And even in a short period of time, were not able to come up that far north. So our little congregation, which was an amazing, caring congregation, really struggled to think about what they can do to help. And it took a conversation amongst a few of us to say, if this young mom had to go that far away and be in the hospital for a month for cancer treatment, what would you do? And very quickly, everyone had lots of ideas, from creating that food train for dad, casseroles coming by the thousands, making sure that dad had numbers of people that he could call last minute that would babysit, people that could be there first thing in the morning if he had a late shift to help to get the kids ready and take them to daycare. All of those things that our congregations do so naturally when someone has a physical illness like cancer. But somehow there was that stigma of this word psychosis, mental health. mental illness that really stopped people from really thinking about what do we need to do as a caring community of faith. And that conversation that happened amongst just a small group of people absolutely transformed the way the dad was able to care for his wife and his kids, and even how he was able to care for himself. It helped mom, who was so far away, know that her children were still being cared for and looked after. And this was a time where she actually had time and the space to focus on what she needed to do for her own mental health and well-being. And that community of faith became so much stronger, because they just reached out in every way possible to help so many people, not just in their own community of faith, not only their own congregation, but also in the wider community. They began to see things from a different way. The second experience was when I was working as a mental health outreach worker in St. John's, Newfoundland, on the street as part of the Street Reach program. We would provide meals. We had a small storefront downtown, and we would provide meals twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 7 to 10. And sometimes in a little tiny space, we would easily have 70 people, and sometimes we would run out of food really quickly. So we'd really set up some boundaries and some rules that the Street Reach did not open until 7 o'clock. That's when meals were served. People could line up, come in, they could stay. Only about half an hour because the space was so small at that time. There was one participant who would always come at about 6:30. And that's when the volunteers were setting up. Other people were waiting outside, but he was so insistent and he would get so angry that he needed the food right then and there. And then other times he would fly in at 9:50 as we were about to close and there was no food left. There was barely a cup of coffee, and he would be very upset. It was hard for us to set boundaries, but we had to. And then there became a point in time when he became quite agitated and violent. It was interesting that he had those reactions on the Tuesday nights when he was coming to Street Reach, but on Thursdays we never had those problems with him. During one of the days, we as staff we were doing some walking with backpacks and helping people that were precariously housed on the street. And we ran into him just on a sidewalk and we were talking. We actually found out that he was working really hard on recovery from substance abuse. And on Tuesday nights, he went to NA, Narcotics Anonymous. And in order for him to get the bus, he needed to come to Street Reach at 6:30 to get something to eat because the bus came at 6:45. And that was the only way he'd be able to get to that meeting. And then other times when he was flying in at 10 to 10 when we were closing, that's when he was able to get on the bus and the bus was there on time and then got to Street Reach at 10 to 10. But of course, he'd be so hungry that he would be very angry and upset that there was no food available for him. We then began to examine our own biases, what made us not want to serve him, not be very frustrated at his actions and his behaviors, recognizing that we were working really hard on equity and inclusion because we wanted to make sure there was enough for everyone, but we didn't actually get to know his story. And once we got to learn his story, we were able to make accommodations because not everyone had that same story. So he knew that he could come at 6:30. We actually asked him to come at 6:15 because no one was really lining up at 6:15. If he could come at 6:15, while we were setting up, we would happily have him come inside so he can eat a bowl of soup or stew or whatever we had on, grab a coffee to go, and then get to his meeting. And equally, if that wasn't able to happen for him beforehand, if we didn't see him at the first part of the night, we would actually save a bowl of whatever we were serving and a cup of coffee. So when he did fly in at 5 minutes to 10, there would be something there for him. And again, that was us being aware of our perspectives, some of the things that we were consciously or unconsciously aware of, and began to explore that maybe equity isn't the best. How do we look at ways of being fair and inviting for all? So most of us feel or hope that the church is called to be a place where people feel supported without judgment and in community. And here's my favorite line. We shall go out with hope of resurrection, We'll give a voice to those who have not spoken. We'll find the words for those whose lips are sealed. We'll raise hymns of strength for hearts that break in grief, including all in circles of our love. We know that a couple of our core spiritual commitments, to use the language of Rosalind Carter, our spiritual commitments or our values, are hospitality and compassion. Hospitality is one of the core values of all major religions, Muslim, Jewish, Christian, and it literally means extending our hand to another, touching another, and getting close enough to recognize our mutual vulnerability to things in this life. Major religions also share the conviction that we're called to care for those who suffer in this world. And both our Hebrew scriptures and the New Testament contain many stories of people called to care for others. God asks us to be faithful, to love one another, to reach out to those who are broken and seek justice for all God's people. So how do we help those? How do we give voice to those who have not spoken? How do we help those find the words when their lips are sealed? How do we, as a community of faith, raise hymns of strength for hearts that break in grief so we can create that circle of inclusive love? So as individuals and those who are part of a community of faith or a particular faith tradition, what would you name as your spiritual commitments or core values? We're going to do a breakout room, but let's not do that. Let's just have some conversation. So I invite you to think about scripture stories or quotes for those who are United Church, a new creed, and our song of faith have lots of ways that have lifted up spiritual commitments and our core values. And we might think about Christian values or religious values or cultural values. Some people might think, as Canadians, one of our core values is the ability to apologize and say we're sorry. So think about the things that, and Maritimers, that sense of hospitality. Think about what are some of our core spiritual commitments or values. And at this point, let's just focus on that. What would you name as some core spiritual commitments or values?
So I would probably use the great commandment, love one another.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, my camera was off. This is Faith because I was eating my supper.
Thanks, Faith. Absolutely. That value and that commitment of loving one another. Yeah. What did you think when you heard the word hospitality? Well, we're good United Church people.
Egg salad sandwiches.
Absolutely. All of the good funeral sandwiches that we know so well.
Asparagus sandwiches.
Me, cream cheese, and cherry.
There you go.
When I heard the word hospitality, the word that came to my mind was radical, because we hear it so often, but at the same time, I recognize we're so inadequate in being able to define what truly is radical hospitality and how best can we do it.
Oh my gosh, Tony, absolutely. So even taking that word that could be very inclusive and comfortable and a call of commitment for us, and shifting that to even more passion and compassion by using the word radical.
Exactly.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
When you said hospitality, Kelly, it made me think, for me, it's about warmth and gathering and a sense of community. And we missed it so much through all of the COVID times. To feel it now is such a wonderful experience again.
Absolutely. Yeah. And for many of us, it really made us recognize even more the value of community. Those of us who are part of church communities, I think we usually have a sense of that. But collectively as a human species during that time, the sense of isolation and disconnection. So connection could be another value. One of the ones I think of when we think about the work of and all of the work of the affirming process in the United Church is inclusion.
And to broaden that a little bit, I've having conversations where folks are broadening inclusion to shifting it to belonging. So we creating a space where we belong.
Yep.
And so when you walk in the door, you participate, you feel like you belong.
Yeah.
That sense of being home or whatever that, however you describe that sense of belonging.
Yeah.
This is where I belong.
Absolutely.
And as a continual of what was just spoken of, I think it's not only friendship, but having empathy and being capable of listening, because it doesn't have to be, it can be somebody in your community as well as someone outside.
Absolutely. Yeah. Empathy and compassion. Support for those who are suffering. Another good United Church value is advocacy. Excellent. Anyone else want to jump in?
Until you said what you said right now, I wasn't sure I could use one of the words that I wanted to say right off the bat, and that love and compassion. What was the first thing I thought? But then I thought of respect and seeking justice for all. With a smile, though. That's the one thing I like when I think of the Christian church, the United Church in particular, and it's justice. It is justice with a smile. It's not justice so much with a hammer.
Oh, great. Thank you for that, Sandra. Absolutely. That sense that this is our shared mission and purpose. Yeah. All right, I'm going to see if I can try to share the screen again. Can you see the screen?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, now I'm going to see if I can find the video because it's not coming up when I clicked on the little magic button.
We lost the shared screen, Kelly.
Yep, I'm working on getting the video up. I don't know why this always works when I practice by myself.
Think you're in good company.
Yes. Doesn't matter that we've been doing this for 3 years.
Exactly.
Okay.
Ready to make it.
Your sales team unstoppable?
See and
Put
hear that
PandaDoc
okay?
to work.
Yeah.
Create and
Sounds
share
good.
standout proposals
Great.
in minutes. Send every
Some of you may already know this or have seen it, but I love it. Brene Brown on empathy.
So what is empathy and why is it very
Sounds
different
good.
than sympathy?
Great, thanks.
Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. And we do it all the time, because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
I don't know if anyone else has seen that before, but I've always found that to be, and I'm really glad that people have brought up empathy and connection as those values. And even just Brene Brown talking about that opening of a sacred space when someone talks to you about something that's meaningful and important to them. And how do we respond? And how is a better way to respond? And sometimes if we don't know what to say, just saying, I don't know what to say, but I'm here with you, next to you. So again, that commitment of accompanying individuals. And when we think about those that are living with, coping with, struggling with, hoping for things to be different rather, when they are experiencing mental health challenges, most people just want that connection. And they don't necessarily need people to understand what they're going through. They just need to know that they're connected. They're not going to be turned away. They're not going to experience more isolation or rejection. So my other favorite song is We Are Pilgrims on a Journey. We are pilgrims on a journey, fellow travelers on the road. We are here to help each other walk the mile and bear the load. Kindred, let me be your servant. Let me be as Christ to you. Pray that I may have the grace to let you be my servant too. I will hold the Christ light for you in the nighttime of your fear. I will hold my hand out to you, speak the peace you long to hear. I will weep when you are weeping. When you laugh, I'll laugh with you. I will share your joy and sorrow till we've seen this journey through. Mental health conditions of our own or of a loved one affect all aspects of our life, including our spiritual well-being. It strikes the very soul of our being, making us feel cut off or separated from God's love, God's acceptance, and even God's community. A mental health disorder changes one's core beliefs and values. And often individuals feel unworthy of God's love and acceptance. They might feel isolated from God. They might feel alone, helpless, and hopeless. I truly believe in the importance of a community to be there to offer care and support to all who walk through the doors. And it really could be something as simple as a smile that changes someone's really difficult day, or a hug for someone who's grieving or feeling alone. It could be just sitting down after church because you've noticed that someone was crying and you've asked if they want to talk about it. And if they said yes, you were available. If they said not now, then you just thank them and let them know that you might be there for them. When we acknowledge the reality of mental health conditions and normalize this as something that can be named and a tangible support offered, we can be the ones to hold the Christ light for others and speak the peace that someone longs to hear. Healing is the peace that comes from knowing that God is working in our lives to bring about the best possible outcomes, which is healing in body, mind, and spirit. And this sense of peace and wholeness are gifts from a loving and compassionate God, and our communities of faith can really work on bringing that peace by creating those safe spaces of inclusion and openness, helping make connection with others and developing authentic relationships of love and empathy. And these values and other spiritual commitments that you named can provide the meaning, the purpose, and the healing that those long to hear and to know. When we look at the spiritual themes in scripture, in our lives as human beings, we can think of guilt and shame. We can think of anger and suffering, fear and anxiety, hopelessness and rejection, loneliness and isolation, and that feeling of overwhelmedness. We can also know the spiritual themes of love, of hope, of healing, of peace, belonging. So more than just a welcome, more than just an inclusion, of belonging, that sense of being home, that knowing redemption and grace, that feeling of forgiveness of self and others, and that being companioned or accompanied along life's journeys. As followers of the way of Jesus, we have incredible stories in the Hebrew scriptures and in the New Testament that speak of themes that can help us when life is challenging: love, forgiveness, belonging, and hope. And one of the unique roles of communities of faith is to be a vessel of hope for all those who are experiencing brokenness, uncertainty, and desolation. I've always loved the line from the United Church, A Song of Faith. We sing of a church seeking to continue the story of Jesus by embodying Christ's presence in the world. We are called together by Christ as a community of broken but hopeful believers. There is not one of us that is more whole than another. When we get in touch with our own sense of self and our own vulnerabilities, we can recognize those places, those cracks that we have, that each of us have. And those are the places where we hope that light shines in, but also where light can shine out. I will hold the Christ light for you in the nighttime of your fear. I will weep when you are weeping. When you laugh, I'll laugh with you. I will share your joy and sorrow till we've seen this journey through. So in your own community of faith, or in a circle of people that you care about deeply and they deeply care about you, a place where you feel comforted, where do you see opportunities to reach out? Reach out in hope. Another part of A Song of Faith is that a place where faith is nurtured. We sing of God's good news lived out, a church with purpose, faith nurtured and hearts comforted, gifts shared for the good of all. Where do you see that in your community of faith, in your wider community, maybe your workplace, your school, a place that's important to you? Where do you feel that you can create a space to reach out to others, to be nurtured, comforted, and where their gifts are able to be shared? What have you noticed about your church or another church or some other community where someone has done something you thought, I would love us to be able to do that. Or even just a little piece that you or part of your community is doing now. That could be a seed to grow some radical idea, some radical compassion, radical hospitality. Quite often, people think that they're a little church, they're not a church in a big urban center. So reaching out to people with mental health challenges, quite often people would think if they're in a large urban center, that's actually part of what their church is supposed to be doing. How do they find ways to do that? And of course, that's definitely part of what it means to be in an urban situation, church ministry. But when we recognize that mental health is a part of all of our lives, therefore mental health challenges and mental health conditions or disorders are absolutely present in people in our congregations, just like cancer, diabetes, or heart disease is. What are little things that we might do to raise awareness of this is a place of welcome and belonging? This is a place of companioning.
Oh, we can name it in either our welcoming statements of all are welcome, but be specifically and broadening out that statement of all are welcome.
Mm-hmm.
We can also name it in our prayers.
Absolutely.
Directly those who are struggling with physical and mental health conditions.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we often say cancer, we often say in the hospital. To be specific might just touch someone in a way that they know that this is a place where I can feel safe. This is a place where my voice can be heard. I can share what's important to me or what's on my heart and mind.
I think creating visible reminders, whether it's in sanctuary or wherever it might be, that speak to someone who's struggling with whatever that might be, whether it's mental illness, whether it's whatever. And I think there's visible reminders that we can place that they connect with and know that we see them.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Not being afraid to have those conversations, to name the difficult things. Yeah.
I think your point about not being afraid is so important. And I am part of a congregation that could sit around a dining room table. It's so small, but it is a wonderful congregation to be part of in the context of any difficult time that one is going through, or real serious mental health issues. Because for anyone in that congregation, when they ask you, how are you today? They don't mind the truth. And it's so good to be able to say that. And you don't even have to go on for a long story. You could perhaps if you wanted to, but it's just that there is such a sense that we care, and they're not always telling you that, but there's just an attentiveness and a caring, and I think that's why this notion of hospitality that we spoke about earlier, it's really hard to capture when it is in a congregation where everyone knows each other and cares for the other, and you just have that feeling. It's pretty wonderful.
It's being known, right? It's being known. It's being home and being known. It's in that place where you can be your true self. And again, looking in the work of clinical spiritual care in a hospital setting, so often, whether someone is coping with a physical illness or a mental health condition, we have a tendency, and it's our human nature, I know, but we have a tendency when someone asks you how you're doing, you can look like absolute crap, but you were going to say, I'm fine. And sometimes it's because we feel we can't be ourselves, or we feel the need that we have to look after other people, whatever the reason is. But to recognize that if this is a place where I'm home, if this is a place where I'm safe, where I can, my unique spirituality is that song. I am safe to express who I am, who my sense of self is. I know the relationship with others who are going to care for me. It's a place that I can ask big questions and maybe not know the answer, or maybe not like the answer, but I can come into this space, and it's a place where whether it's God or that sense of greater purpose, that sense of again being home in something that's far greater than who we are as individuals. And those are the very things that I truly believe that communities of faith can do, and it takes intention. We can do those little things, and we can recognize the little seeds that are always happening in our congregations. And it's just, how do we nurture or grow those seeds, or how do we do something that's entirely radical? Something that is completely out of our wheelhouse, is one of like a big major idea, but who's to say that you can't make that happen, even in little tiny congregations, or congregations that a lot of different activities are happening. You may not be a place that is cultivating so close individual relationships. Anyone else? Any other ideas?
Kelly, it's Ange here. It's the end of a very long day, so I do not want you to see me on the camera tonight. I'm sorry. I'm not lurking. I was just thinking.
We're okay with Anglicans lurking.
Okay. I am Anglican, but my formation was strongly Lutheran. So this idea of hospitality and servant leadership, two of the key things that you touched on. And I was thinking all along about the servant song, which is your pilgrim song. And oh yeah, it has a different name in the United Church book, and it's a different name in the Lutheran and the Anglican. Anyway, all of that this has been really refreshing. And I want to just put a word out there when we were talking about hospitality. Because I work in clinical spiritual care, but I also spent years in congregations as the church musician and stuff like that. I have an understanding of hospitality that is a sense of holding space for people. And you can't see my hands here, but my hands are sort of cupping a space in front of me. And so whatever is in that space, whether it's anger or shame or love or joy or whatever it happens to be at the moment, hospitality, or that radical hospitality that Tony mentioned, is me holding space for whatever is to be there. Yeah. And I don't have any other words to describe what it is I do as a spiritual care practitioner.
Yeah.
I wish I had something more profound, but there's just, it's like cradling that space or holding that space for people. I just wanted to offer that image.
Thanks, Ange. And for the Affirm committee to know, Angela is a dementia specialist in spiritual care, one of the very few in Canada. And it would be great to have her do some work with the Affirm committee, possibly a presentation on how do we as congregations help those and families, but individuals and families who have a loved one living with dementia.
Thank you. Kelly?
Yep.
Do you have time for one more question?
Certainly do.
So just offer a scenario. You're in the church. I'm struggling with mental health condition. I put myself in that spot.
Yep.
So in the church, we're always asking for food for something or other. But I get confused on the date. I bring it the day ahead or the day after. And eventually people forget to ask, don't ask me because you can't count on Elizabeth.
Right.
So I'm not belonging anymore. Maybe I sing in the choir, but my anxiety is such I'm 10 minutes late for rehearsal. And I'm always trying to find searching for my car keys or something. Yep. During that. And then eventually you kind of see I'm I'm not quite as enthusiastically invited to join. How can we as congregation and as leaders help in those circumstances?
Excellent question, and I think one that most of us in congregational leadership have wrestled with at some point in time, and probably those who've been members of choirs or UCW groups, when you recognize those people that have been the active participants, givers, organizers of the work that you do, and their life has shifted, their health conditions have shifted. And I think part of that is how finding ways to accompany them, finding ways that that still give them a place of belonging, and maybe it's not having them make the potato salad with the mayonnaise that may not be good, but is there something else that is life-giving and meaningful for them that does not provide, like, that makes them part of. And sometimes it's having difficult conversations, especially when individuals and when individuals' health changes so dramatically that it is changing their actions, reactions, and behaviors. And sometimes we've experienced people that we have known well throughout our ministry, and then all of a sudden something shifts and their behavior is not appropriate, it's violent, and we don't know why. But if we actually begin to think about what's happening to their brain, what's happening, is this a mental health concern? Is this dementia or something else happening in their life? And we might have to have those difficult conversations, which in a community of faith, and when Sandra talked about when you know those people so well, you might be able to have those conversations. At the same time, you might know people so well, you might look at this person and say, oh my goodness, this person was my Sunday school teacher when I was 6 years old, and now they're 86, and I don't know, 96, whatever. I don't know what to do with having this difficult conversation with them. And but I think if we sit back and think, what would we want? What would I want? What would I want for my family member? What would I want for myself if people have known me, and all the work I've done, and to have that change so dramatically, and that dignity of self not seen as it used to be. Tough. Yeah.
Thank you.
But doesn't it probably start with people building relationships with others first, so that there's a comfort when things do happen with somebody, that you kind of know what's going on with them, or you can find out. I think you have to start with just building relationships so that you get to know people better, so that when those hard times come, you're able to say, is everything okay?
Yeah. And sometimes it's recognizing that this person that you've known for so long, maybe their family, maybe they're the ones that are part of the congregation, and that you're connected to that person, but you might have to cultivate a relationship with their family. And maybe the family's not able to see some of the things that you're seeing, because it's quite difficult as a family to see some of the things that you don't want to see when you're experiencing your loved one in a certain way. But there's also that empathy, that companioning, that you're not alone. We are not alone. So it could even help a family who's not connected to your community of faith to know that, we've known your mom a really long time, and we can only imagine just the hurt or the pain that you might be experiencing seeing all those changes, because we're seeing them too. And let's find ways that we can work together so your mom can still be active in all the things that she's able to do in our church, like she has all those years. But at the same time, how can we support you? Because this is your mom, and we love her too. So in that situation, it's kind of it's both and. You're helping that individual and the family. The next piece I have is, where do we go from here? And do the share. Oops. Where do we go from here? In 2017, the mandate, and I threw away my observers and mandates many years ago. But this mandate has always been at the top of something that I could actually find it quite easily. So in 2017, the mandate had an article called "We Are Not Alone: A Faithful Response to Mental Health Challenges," and it was by a person named Kim Falls. So I'm going to offer a quote that she shared, and then some strategies that her congregation has done to be how can we be helpful? Where do we go from here? So Kim says the Bible contains many stories of individuals in severe emotional or mental distress. And some theologians present these conditions as punishment for sin, unfaithfulness, or as a possession by demons. This kind of theology can also be reflected in our hymns and our liturgies. So we must begin to recognize that we are all beloved children of God, all gifted, and portraits of human suffering, calling upon and deserving of God's and our grace and compassion. We are called by Jesus not to turn our backs on suffering, but to offer presence and caring. And the work that Kim did with the congregation, they came up with 4 pieces, which again, I feel very much are key parts to what I've learned through the affirming process. Be sensitive. Be mindful of the language that you use. Mental health condition, disorder instead of mental illness is far more respectful and less stigmatizing. Be open. Welcome open conversation about the pervasiveness of mental health challenges in our society and in the world today. We are all vulnerable and need to support one another, especially those who are suffering in silence. Don't be afraid to ask how someone is doing, the same as you would for someone dealing with a physical illness. Be present and respect their willingness to talk or not about it. Consider actions that you or your community of faith might do to help support them, just as you would for those living with a physical illness. Be inclusive. Actively welcome individuals with mental health challenges into your faith community. Welcome them to be fully included in the life and work of the congregation. We all have gifts to contribute to the body of Christ. So in worship, which we've already said, remember those who are dealing with mental health challenges and the prayers of our community. Be educated. Know that anyone is vulnerable to a mental health condition, regardless of age, gender, socioeconomic status, race, or creed. Participation in the life of a faith community is proven to play a significant role in a person or their family's well-being. So seek out the resources that are available in your area, in your health authority, and in your community, and create a list of resources in a pamphlet and make it available. And when Tracy said have images around your space, so maybe some of the images that I had in this PowerPoint, like a brain that has the 2 sides of the brain and someone reaching down to that person crouched inside, maybe something like that could actually draw someone towards some more information that could be helpful to them. So have outreach workers, mental health professionals, and community organizations do presentations to your pastoral care team or to your congregation, either in worship or outside of your worship time. I truly believe, and I know quite a number of years ago, I think this is when we were still Maritime Conference, I was part of a larger group that kind of had a meeting around mental health supports to congregations. And one of the things that I think came before our annual meeting was around training for congregational leaders. I truly believe that congregational leaders should get extra training because the church is often on the front lines. And while accompanying people with mental health conditions is so important for a community of faith to be able to do, as well as the congregational leaders and pastoral care teams, it is so important to help and encourage people to get professional support And the congregation can even help them with that. Sometimes people are just in situations that they cannot even get out to a medical appointment or to a support group or to an appointment with a counselor. So if the congregation is able to be alongside individuals and or their families to support and companion with them with compassion and hope, that's exactly who we are called to be. I'll end our time together. There's still time for questions and discussion. So after this prayer, we will stop recording, but there's still time to connect as a larger group. So just take an open space to open your mind, your heart, and your spirit to the community and connection that has been created this evening, to the seeds and ideas that may be planted that are looking to be nurtured, to radical ways of us living God's love in our congregations, but also in the world in which we're a part. May the Christ who walks on wounded feet walk with you on the road. May the Christ who serves with wounded hands stretch out your hands to serve. May the Christ who loves with a wounded heart open your hearts to love. May you see the face of Christ in everyone you meet, and may everyone you meet see the face of Christ in you. Amen.
Amen.
So Elizabeth, if you can stop recording.
Yes. I'll stop the recording.
Thank you.